So I was looking through my streaming services the other day, looking for a horror movie to watch, and I saw this movie called The Empty Man, and it looked like maybe one of those Slender Man, Bye Bye Man nonsense movies for dumb teenagers, but I'd never heard of it, so I decided to look into it, and what I saw online was really fascinating, and I knew I had to watch it. So not only does this have a much lower audience score than critical score, which if you know anything about movies and you look into stuff like this, you know that a movie is at least going to be interesting, if not really good, if that's true. It's always a sign. It's always a sign. Not only that, but apparently this was the last movie made by Fox before they were bought out by Disney. And Disney had no idea how to market this weird 2.5-hour horror movie, so they just dumped it into a theater with no press at all and just let it die. Which is really unfortunate because as it turns out, the metrics were right, as they always are. This movie is super interesting. I'll get into what I think is going on with the critical versus the audience reaction in a minute, but first I want to talk about the movie. So it's ostensibly a horror movie, but it's more of a tense, well-done procedural about a detective investigating a really weird cult. And it is 2.5 hours, like I said, and it's almost like 3 movies in one. The first is this weird sort of possession movie about some hikers in a shack in Bhutan. And then it goes forward in time, like 20 years, and becomes an investigation into a weird cult that you learn is centered around this paranormal thing that happened in Bhutan, mingled with a teenage kind of Slender Man, Bye Bye Man drama. It's really strange. What works about it is that it's almost operating on this level, conceptually, of true Lovecraftian horror. Not in terms of like a big Cthulhu monster or some crap like that. It's more like the Outer Gods kind of Lovecraft, where things are out there beyond our ability to see, outside of this physical reality, and are trying to find their way in, which is the more fascinating type of Lovecraft and the harder part to put on film, which is why you don't see it that much. The worst part, actually, is when it tries to be a more traditional monster movie, when you have the kind of Slender Man, Bye Bye Man stuff coming in. Like the teenagers will, I don't know, what did they do? They clink a bottle on a bridge and say I almost said Bye Bye Man. They say the Hollow Man's name 3 times and then he comes to visit you. This is like very teen scream garbage movie material in other movies. In this one, it's better handled than that, but it is still the weakest element, and it's almost unfortunate that they included it, because what surrounds it is so much more interesting. Because as this man goes into this cult, it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and there are some really tense, interesting scenes, some really wild paranoid elements, good performances, and the filmmaking is absolutely top notch. And this is a good time to say that this is made by a first-time director, David Pryor, who is also a producer on the Netflix series Voir, if you haven't seen that. He and David Fincher, I believe, made this sort of series that's a love letter to movies, if you will. It's people telling their stories about movies, and it's really cool. But I digress on that. The reason I think this actually has not that much clout behind it in terms of people talking about it has to do with audience expectation. I think when audiences saw that this was called The Hollow Man and they saw the promotional materials, they thought it was going to be dumber, right? They thought it was going to be this, I keep bringing it back, but Bye Bye Man, Slender Man kind of nonsense. They wanted it to be the worst elements of what it was. They were expecting probably a 90-minute thing that's a teen scream kind of junk. And when they were confronted with a 2.5-hour movie that's almost like a police procedural with minor elements of what they were expecting, I think general audiences were probably bored and confused. So, sucks for them, but good for us. Very good for us. I think anybody who's interested in horror, like genuinely good horror, that contains really good filmmaking, exceptionally cool ideas, and is okay with the movie being a little bit messy, all these narratives don't flow together in the most cohesive way possible, then you're going to have a good time with this one. And I'd totally recommend it. This movie deserves to have a cult classic status, I believe. Maybe not as much as some other things. It, like I say, it does have some problems, but If you like good filmmaking, good horror, this one's for you. But if you just want a 90-minute movie about teenagers screaming and reacting to jump scares that you know are coming, then stay far away. Go watch Ouija or something instead. I don't know. And by the way, I am aware that I've said the name Hollow Man instead of Empty Man a few times now, which just goes to show this movie should not have contained that element and should have been called something else. It's just bad marketing. Bad titling. Anyway, that's me done for the day. Now get out of my theater. The boys and I are going to watch Reanimator, a very different kind of Lovecraft.